Hey guys, what's up? So we're looking at my Blitz performance from today, January 27, and it seems as though the old brain switched back on somehow. So I started the day with one loss here. Opponent played really well at 91%, very strange game because I was completely all over him, and then one mistake, which I completely missed, and then 9 wins in a row. So what I thought I would do is just pull up 3 games from today, all 5-minute blitz, because that's just the way that I'm testing my performance at the moment. And we're going to look for some really good moves. There are 3 brilliant moves. So game number 1, we have a Caro Khan, and of course I'm going for this Knight C3 and the von Hennig gambit, is it? I believe. Okay, they take the pawn, I bring out my bishop. Computer disapproves. Knight comes out to defend the pawn, and now f3, and you want them to take. Here they don't take. Now the question you have to ask is, can I capture here? Well, no, because there's 2 attackers, and right now only 1 defender. So I play queen to e2 to add a second defender to the pawn. This will then allow me to capture with tempo hitting the bishop. And the queen now comes in and grabs this spare pawn. Now, my queen defends this bishop, the knight is defended by the pawn. And so, yes, I'm giving up a pawn, but we've also completely opened up the d-file. So now bishop e3, again the computer disapproves, hit the bishop, they finally grab the pawn and I recapture. So that, obviously that pawn capture hits my queen, so I just recapture. Now we're hitting the queen twice, and the queen has to skedaddle out of there. She goes all the way back to d8. Now I come in with my knight to f5, and we are looking at the f7 square, obviously, looking at that twice, and it's right now it's undefended. Opponent pushes e6, very natural move, and I castle. Okay, they now bring out the bishop, and you can see that the eval has just swung. Now it is time for a brilliant move. There are actually 2 alternatives. Excuse me, Bentley's having a growl. There's 2 brilliant moves in this situation. See if you can find either of them, or for a bonus point, find both. And pause if you need to. And they are actually both kind of variations on the same theme. Okay, so the issue here is that this pawn that they pushed from e7 to e6 is blocking this target. Now the pawn on f7 is defended only once, and it's by the king. Therefore, if we have 2 attackers, we can get a free capture, because the king can't be the first recapturer. He can only be the last recapturer, because if there's any other pieces looking at that square, he'd be capturing into check, and he's not allowed to do that. So there are 2 approaches to this. Now the move that I played was rook takes f5, and if the pawn recaptures, then black then walks into a fork, because this pawn is doing 2 jobs. It was defending the bishop on there, and it's also blocking my site of f7. They take, I take, and the game doesn't go on that too much longer. I grab the rook, they take the knight, they kick my bishop now, and now simply bishop to here. The queen is pinned, so this pretty much forces a trade of queens, and then after this black resigns. So he's down a full piece. Okay, so let's go back and let's see, did you find the other brilliant move? And it's a twist on the move order. So the other brilliant move here is, so right now Stockfish 11 is saying that rook takes f5 is best. When I did the analysis, this move actually turns out better. We capture, we have a fork on the queen and the rook, and so the natural thing would be for the king to take here, and that's just going to run into problems, because now we can grab the bishop again for free because this pawn is pinned, and again it's going to work out very badly. They really have to take this knight, but again white is just winning there. So well done if you found either of those, double marks if you found both. Okay, game number 2. My opponent's rated under 1400 here. And we have a Caro-Kann again. And here they decline the offer of a pawn and bring out the knight instead. So whenever a knight comes out here, it's very tempting, obviously, just to push the central pawn if you can, with tempo. Knight now comes into my space. And I decide here to push f4. Computer doesn't like it. Computer said I should have traded on e4. But I'm grabbing the space here. They grab my knight, I recapture. Queen now comes out. Looking at this pawn which was undefended. So I play queen to d3. Quite often a good move I find in the Caro. They push e6, I develop my knight. They bring out their bishop, we now have bishop tension. I just put my bishop here onto d2, adding a second defender to this pawn, which frees the queen to go about other duties. Castles, and I bring out my knight now to g5. And the eagle-eyed among you will spot there is an immediate checkmate threat that must be dealt with. And there we go. Now we have a concession. We have a hole. We have lots of holes now on the dark squares. Black has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pawns all on light squares, and I still have a dark squared bishop. So, queen over now to h3, threatening to come in with mate again. Another forcing move now, h5. I develop my bishop to e2, and the knight now comes out here. Now, on the next move I castle, which it says is a missed win, because I kind of saw that there is an attacking opportunity here, but I didn't pull the trigger straight away. It still says white is +4, and the queen pulls back to c7. Not the best move here. So, there are some good moves here. The computer actually recommends the move pawn to g4, just threatening to punch holes in the pawn defense there. It's not the move that I played. Pause if you need to guess the move. Okay, the move I played is bishop takes h5. And basically, if the pawn recaptures, then we've got queen takes, and my queen's just threatening to come in here. There's no defense. The knight's away from his post. There's really not much that can be done. And for the queen to defend over here, it's just too slow. He's going to have to move the pawn and the knight as well. They come back now with the bishop threatening to take out my knight. And what would you play here? Because the next move is also a brilliancy. Okay, pause if you need. The move I played is bishop takes g6. And the problem here now is that although black can take out one of my pieces that's looking at this key mating square on h7, he can't remove both. So whatever happens next, the queen's going to come into h7 and it will be mate. I think what's he saying? Oh, knight here is the only option really, but that's only a stay of execution as well. Even with that, it's mate in 3. So hang on. So with knight here protecting the mating square, we eliminate the knight. Whatever then happens, it's going to be, well, you can do it a couple of ways. Bishop takes with check here, and then queen into here. No, king can't recapture. Bishop takes there is check there, and that would be mate. Or even queen to h6 is also mate. So that's a nice one. 2 brilliancies in a row. And the final game. This one's a bit longer. The first games were like 16 and 15 moves. This one's a little bit longer, but we'll run through it. So I've got the black pieces, and I am now playing the Dutch. Specifically, so the classical Dutch, I think, might continue with e6 here. I am playing the Leningrad Dutch. Now, the idea here is to fianchetto the bishop and castle kingside. So you might think, well, this looks kind of similar to the King's Indian defense. In the King's Indian defense, this pawn never moved forward to f5, it's still on f7. But in the King's Indian, sometimes you want to move this pawn forwards. So you end up kind of having to move the knight away so that you can play f5. So the Leningrad Dutch is a twist on that, where you play pawn to f5 up front. I fianchetto my bishop. Now what's nice about this, though, London players, if you like the convenience of being able to play the same first 6 or 7 moves on more or less every game, this Leningrad Dutch I find is quite similar. Because this is move 5, and I've played like the same opening moves against most things, and then d6, and we've kind of got to our basic setup. At higher levels, you'll find more players with white will fianchetto their king's bishop. Black often wants to get in their light squared bishop fianchetto first if they can, and that can be a good thing. I don't do that in this game. Queen e8, another very typical move. They put their bishop in front, and now I strike. So this is absolutely key. So when you've got your basic setup in the Leningrad, it's all, in fact, many Dutch systems. Your goal is to, as black, is to play e5, and white very often wants to play e4. So one of the ideas with Queen e8 is to support an early e5 push and stake your claim on the centre. Other ideas can be, for example, pushing this pawn and bringing the queen up to the king side for an attack. You very often are attacking on the king side in many Dutch systems. So e5 takes. And now white's doing well in terms of minor piece development. They've got all 4 minor pieces out. This rook has moved. But you've got to like black's central control maybe a little bit more here. I'm behind in queenside development, but that is not super important right now. Okay, we have h4 from white and e4 now, with tempo hitting the knight. And I really have got a nice level of control here. Plus this bishop could become a monster later on in the game. Their knight comes forward into my position, and I kick h6. So I know I'm very often not a fan of pushing your king's bodyguard pawns, but here it's pretty forcing because the knight now has to go back to h3, and this is not fantastic here for white. I develop my bishop here. The computer preferred pawn to c6. Pawn to c6 is another good idea for stopping this knight from coming forward, this guy. Okay, and they now defend the pawn, and very often actually you see white creating this little pawn chain there on the queen side, but it isn't actually the strongest. And you can see that the eval did dip a bit there. Okay, I develop my knight. Got ideas about maybe bringing my knight here into this hole here. They now need to play knight f4. That is the best move. I bring my knight into the hole. They push forwards, and I push again on the king side. And this is something that's really exciting about the Dutch, is launching this king side against king side attack is great. Okay, they trade off the bishop. Now I'm not unhappy about that. The bishop's prospects are not that great with all these light squared pawns around, so this is cool for me. Move the queen to c2. I centralize my rook on the open file. Very natural move. Now their knight comes in, and now black is just winning. Okay, yes, the knight is looking at 2 undefended pawns, but are we concerned about undefended pawns on this side of the board, right? Not right now. I mean, yeah, these pawns which are off their marks could be dangerous later on if white survives. Let's see what happens. The knight now comes in, boom. Knight to d3, forking the king and the rook. The only way out of it is really for the bishop to take the knight. So you have bishop takes, pawn takes, defended by the rook that I placed on d8 on the open file. And now the queen's got problems. And remember this bishop, who's only moved once in the game? Right, so if the queen moved to either of these squares, then that's just asking for trouble. Yeah? With the discovery, the knight will get to move, come into the attack. I slide my queen over now. My idea here is that I'm eyeing up the g2 pawn, because white hasn't castled. Does he castle? No. Knight back here, and now boom, again. The computer preferred, actually, to sack the exchange to open up the e-file, which would be definitely interesting. Don't know if I considered that move, but I got my queen out of trouble. Rook now comes across, because it hasn't got really much else, to be honest. And my knight flies in. Okay, and white is now looking very much surrounded by Mexicans here. And here we get to the critical point. Queen to f3. I thought this was a good move from white, and it is the best move on the board. But we get ourselves into quite a standoff situation where there's a lot of stuff looking a lot of stuff. So pause. Now the next move that I play is the best move. The chess.com did not categorize it as a brilliant move. I was very, very pleased with it. So what would you play in this situation as why? So clearly, if we trade queens, then white has managed to simplify the board to quite a degree. Getting the queens off the board means having the king in the center is not so much of an issue. So I'm thinking I really don't want to do that. So what have we got? We've got taking the bishop, king takes, again trading queens. All this really helps white's prospects, to be honest. So what I spot is the following. Queen takes rook. Okay, do you see it? Now the king can't move. The king has to take the queen. There's only one legal move. And now knight takes. And even if I end up giving up my knight, which I probably will, okay, king takes, I've actually won another exchange in all of that. So right now I'm actually +6 in materials, and it doesn't carry on for too much longer. I simplify, I grab another pawn, centralize the rook, and white resigns. So there you go. So good night's sleep last night. No more experiments with sugar or bread for me. I've learned what I need to learn from that particular few days after my fast last week. So I don't know how much of it was the fast, because it does sharpen your mind. And at least the first couple of days while I was doing the fast and not eating, my brain was sharp and my performance was quite good. So I don't know if it's the fast. I don't know if it's just lack of nutrition that impaired me. But anyway, I know that the sugar and the wheat certainly doesn't help. So there you go. Thought you'd enjoy those little exercises. Thanks for watching. See you soon.